David Cox is in the house. He's the new URI head coach.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Great to have you in on this Friday evening. Don't tell anybody, but we recorded this program on Tuesday. You know, it's the first time we ever, we double book politicians all the time. It was the first time we ever double booked basketball coaches. So you might have met Jared Grasso here on Tuesday evening on both programs at 7:30 on URI TV and Fox Providence at midnight. If you missed that, you can always find the shows, of course, at foxprovidence.com, and that's a lot of excitement at Bryant. But there was a lot of nail-biting going on around here for basketball fans of URI and Rhode Island in general when Dan Hurley left, and the whole big to-do as to who's going to replace him went on. You know that a basketball program has arrived at a certain level when it becomes front-page news, not just the sports section, and there's Dan Hurley's news as he went off to UConn. Dan keeps threatening to come up here and give us a final swan song. He's telling me like he's busy, but it just, when things calm down, I'm sure Coach Cox is going to explain that things never calm down when you're running a basketball program. But I'm sure that he'll make a last visit up here sooner or later over the course of the summer. In the meantime, hey, it's big boy sports. You got to turn the page. Dan, of course, was lamenting with Eyewitness News how difficult the decision was to leave.
Coach, going back and forth and over it, and knowing deep down inside what I had to do, in the end. But it was just so hard to make that choice final. Having spent time in the state and the pride that people have had the last 2 years in the program, especially, just how this whole thing has changed. Just knowing that the impact of the decision I was going to make, the negative effect it was going to have on so many people was hard.
Well, it's big business and there's relationships, it's complicated and all of that. In the meantime, though, it was a 2.5-week promise from the athletic director, Thor Bjorn, to make a decision, and he kind of almost hit it on the timetable. Here was the headline announcing the brand new coach, who is not so brand new to the program. He's one of the guys that's helped build this thing with Dan Hurley, because it's never a one-man operation. And the athletic director said, actually, in the last few days of the search process, he earned it.
Cox earned this, and he earned it certainly over the last 4 years, over the last 2 weeks, and then during the interview process. He just did an incredible job. We got to see firsthand what his vision was, his plan.
So, for those of you, full disclosure, I'm the public address announcer at URI basketball games for the last 6 years, so I feel like I'm part of the team. So if I'm not completely journalistically tough on this guy, you can give me a little break on that. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks for having me.
It's I'm sure it's an awesome development in your personal and professional life. You couldn't wipe that smile off your face on announcement day. Just a handful of days ago, your family was beaming. So some members of your family are good marketers. They were walking around talking about how this thing is going to go to even greater heights. There was so much energy coming out of the family. So it's a team decision, right? And it's a team success story.
Very much so. It's an exciting time for myself, obviously personally and professionally. But as you mentioned, my family's been along this journey with me. Obviously, my mother and father were able to attend the press conference, and those have been advocates of mine, obviously ever since birth. I mentioned to the administration that I went to William & Mary. I was about 2.5 hours away from D.C., and my parents never missed a home game, even though my father was a postal clerk and had to be at work at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then obviously my immediate family now with my wife, who we've been married for 18 years, and my daughter and my son, for them to, been a part of this journey with me. It's been a long journey, 12 years in this particular business, 21 years of coaching, a lot of moves along the way, and they stuck with me, supported me, and now we're all here together.
I thought, and forgive us, we weren't able to grab the clip, but I thought the most charming moment of the announcement day was when you kind of stopped the room at the end of your speech to say, we want to announce our newest recruit, our first announcement of the new regime, and even the administration was kind of like, already, and you suggested that class of 2024 or more,
Sure.
you introduced that you'd offer your scholarship to your son who's in middle school at Westerly, and it was a great touch. It was a good laugh in the room. But then what was the best part was that he was fielding interviews afterwards, responding to the whole situation. So from soup to nuts, it was a great day.
Sure, no, it was a fun
He's a
day.
very sharp kid, by the way. He was very, very, very articulate in terms of his answers and very, so obviously he's grown up right.
Sure, I think the suit helped. You know, we put him in a nice suit, and he kind of played the part. But no, outstanding young man. I thought it was.
Is he on your radar? Or in 6 years, are we going to see him?
He is on my radar, actually. But I think he'll probably go into the coaching just like me at some point. You know, we all have that moment where we realize that, you know, perhaps professionally playing might not be in the cards, but he's got a sharp mind for basketball. He's always around it, so you know, I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with him. Again, I'm just dead at home, so you know, it was pretty easy to come up with.
But what was the family's reaction when you finally got the news that you've been chosen?
Well, a lot of excitement. I mean, I have to tell you, I came back. The interview was conducted on Tuesday. The administration had mentioned that a decision was forthcoming within the next 24 to 48 hours. Tuesday night, I believe it was, late Tuesday night, as my wife and I were sitting there kind of just watching TV, or the TV was watching us, I got a call from the administration, from Thor actually, and we talked. It was a brief conversation, but it was obviously one in which, you know, I knew that I was going to be offered the job, and my wife and I had a moment. You know, we hugged. We shed a few tears, and then we crashed, and then we just went to sleep. You know, all the tension that had built up over the previous 10 days to 2 weeks, it just kind of culminated in this, and it felt good.
So let me ask you about some of the business aspects of this whole thing, because I think it's been fascinating. And you know, despite feeling like you know, I'm semi in the huddle there with these guys, there are some questions that I think people want to hear answered regarding the whole process. You know, going outside would have created a new, fresh look for URI. There was a lot of, I don't know, source dime dropping on social media and the like, that if you had not been chosen, the team, you know, might have broken up, that kids might have left. I'm sure that the administration, in some ways, before they really got comfortable with what your vision was and all of that, has to be wary of being held hostage by the idea that the associate head coach is really the glue that's going to keep this team together. And if we go out new, then we may have a couple, 3-year wait to rebuild the program again. How much of that is true? In other words, that, I mean, hostage is way over, it's a too tough word, but how much of that do you think was true, that the kids might have bolted if you hadn't got that gig?
Well, I'm not so sure that they would have necessarily bolted. I mean, I think that this university is an outstanding university. It's an outstanding program, and the players that were here have had a tremendous amount of success, particularly in the last couple of years. And of course, I've been a part of that. I've built relationships with these young men, but they've also fostered relationships throughout the Rhode Island community. You know, other students, faculty members, so on and so forth. In regards to the recruits, they haven't been to campus yet, and I'm pretty much the only one that they knew that was still remaining, the conduit between the University of Rhode Island and wherever they are at this particular moment. So those were, I think those were heartfelt, and it was overwhelming, obviously, to me to receive that type of support. But what I wanted the administration to know, and what I would like for the URI community and the fan base to know, that this was not, as you mentioned, a hostile takeover nor a hostage situation. I wanted, I wanted this job, and I wanted it because of, of my history here at the school in particular, and my history as a coach over the past 21 years. I wanted to prove to them, that I was the right guy for this particular job because of all the things that I've done, not necessarily because I'm a pretty good recruiter.
Well, one of the things Thor Bjorn, the athletic director, talked about in the announcement was that, without being named interim coach or anything formal when Danny left, you really kind of held the thing together. I mean, you had an unusual clause in your contract that if you were not hired as head coach, there was a check. Sure. I'm guessing not quite as big as the check that you've got on an annual basis, but you would have been paid. And I think we kind of got a flavor that you were getting close to the gig when Dan hired somebody else at UConn to sit on the bench, and so I think it was going that way. But he was saying to the public that it was the integrity about the way you handled the process, the way you kept the kids together, the way you had some kind of an objective approach to the program. How did you do that? You were telling the kids what in the interim?
Well, I just mentioned this to Thor as well. As soon as Danny departed, I think that Thor did an outstanding job of meeting with the players initially, and then he met with me, and he gave us a timeline, and he gave us a plan. So, immediately after Dan's announcement, an hour later, he had already discussed with us what the plan, what the plan of action was. And, with that being the case, my main focus at that point was those 10, 11, 12 guys that were still remaining in that room, making them feel comfortable, with the process and addressing their day-to-day needs. So that was just my main goal. And in addressing their day-to-day needs, it included, things such as making sure they were up on time, and getting to class, and getting to study hall, and that we were conducting workouts, so that some of the days would go a little bit faster and the angst would be a little bit less, for those young men.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about why David Cox became the head coach. Stay with us.
And we were looking for a coach that could build on Dan's foundation, build a new legacy that's even bigger and better than Dan's. And that's what we think we're going to do with Coach Cox.
It's the right thing to say. It's a hard thing to do. But I'm not sure that even the most intimate of basketball fans or sports fans in general understand how much an assistant or associate head coach has to do with the success of a program. I mean, when the head coach is a big personality, kind of sucks the air out of the analytical room a little bit, doesn't it?
Yes.
But you put in a lot of hours.
Yes.
And you know these kids, and I've seen practices, and you've been very, very engaged. So you've been part of that success story and this legacy. And by the way, you deserve congratulations for what this team has accomplished with him. How much and where is that nuance between what he owns and what you own in that? And then how does that end up, targeting a promise that Dr. Dooley just laid on the table that it's going to be bigger and better?
Sure. Well, it was initially, again, I'm thankful to Dan, obviously, for everything, for giving the opportunity, for trusting in me, for allowing me to coach.
You told me he gave you a lot of equity.
He did. No, he very much did. He told me from day one that he wanted me to come in and help him with recruiting, but also he told me that he wanted me to help him with coaching. And you don't see a lot of head coaches, particularly head coaches of his caliber, who will say that to, a potential assistant coaching candidate. So, that right there just, it made me feel good. There was a mutual respect. And then I had to earn it, obviously, out on the floor, probably for the first several months. And I think we had just a great synergy. And because of that, he trusted me, he valued me, and he gave me a lot of autonomy.
Well, there's so many aspects to this job, it seems to me. There's the game prep, there's the scouting the opposition, there's the coaching in the practice time, which is not so glamorous.
Right.
I mean, it's like a military operation when you guys are running that thing. But then there's the building of the franchise, and it's the recruiting, and making sure you get the right caliber kids, and make sure they can actually study, and then dealing with the AAU guys, and all of the money that hangs around. I mean, it's a whole, but you were instrumental in developing this roster, right?
Yes.
Where do you now transition between the guy that's out there in the trenches, meeting moms and dads initially, with the big guy coming in? Now you're the big guy coming in, and you've got to hire a staff that's going to do that outreach. Is that a hard transition, seamless, or really difficult?
I haven't made it yet, so we're going to see if it's hard or not. I do enjoy the aspect of recruiting in regards to, people and relations that, developing relationships. When I was at William & Mary, I was a sociology major. I spent 10 years in the field of education.
You're a people guy.
I do. I love people. I love interacting. I love finding out about, what makes people tick and what makes people go. So in the recruiting realm, that's paid dividends. So will I completely completely, back out? No. I will still be involved because it's something that, that I enjoy doing, and obviously, the buck is going to start with me now.
But there's a lot of politics with this recruiting. A head coach has got to be careful who he actually meets with, because if he weighs in with one kid and doesn't weigh in with another, the other kid gets a chip on his shoulder. I've done a little investigation about how this whole thing works. It's a finesse game out there, right?
True. That's true, and I'll have to learn that part of the game, because normally I was on the front line. I was the guy that Dan would just send in, and then I would kind of make waves and figure it out and navigate the landscape, and then kind of bring it back to Dan, a little nicer. But as you're mentioning, yes, it's a delicate landscape, and again, the individuals that I hire are going to have to be able to navigate that.
Delicate and competitive as all get out.
Very competitive.
Do you ever take a step back? I ask all the big-time coaches these questions from time to time. Do you ever take a step back and think about the economy of you? I mean, you just signed a contract, again, like Dan, the highest state-paid employee in the state of Rhode Island. And by the way, that's not a criticism. You got to get in the game in order to be able to compete. But your whole damn career hinges on a 17-and-a-half-year-old's decision about where they want to be for the next 4 years. Huh?
Yes, that's scary.
Is that a daily thought when you're on the road out there, or is it something that you try to?
Well, it's not a daily thought, but it is something that, as an assistant coach, and as assistant coaches, we talk about that quite often, particularly in regards to recruiting. But even as a head coach or an associate head coach, not only are we relying on these young men to make obviously sound or the right decisions, which is to come to us, but also when we get them there, we have to then rely on them to continue to mature as people and as players, so that they can embrace the day-to-day work ethic, so that they can learn to balance the academic, the social, and the basketball, all of those things. So we're relying on 17, 18, 19-year-old people not only to make the decision to come to us, but to continue to mature and then to produce out there on the court in order for us to get wins. So yes, pretty much our life and our livelihoods depend on, a group of young men.
And one false move by 1 or 2 or 3 kids in a program and all heck breaks loose.
That's correct.
I had asked Jared Grasso earlier in the week about some of the tough news that the collegiate world is suffering through right now.
Sure.
Louisville et al. Oh, and by the way, that whole Pitino thing. All right, what's the real story? Was Pitino in the middle of this mix, or you don't know?
That I don't know.
You don't know.
That I don't know.
No comment.
Yes.
I just
no comment.
The big-time world of college basketball has its foibles and its difficulties right now. How do you stay clear of the problems?
Wow, you have to do things the right way. You have to hire the right people. You have to surround yourself with the right people, first and foremost.
Is it easy to trip up?
It's I don't want to say it's easy to trip up, because again, if you're doing things the right way, you can avoid it. But there are a lot of landfalls and pitfalls and obstacles out there. And again, in this competitive recruiting world, there are a number of your competitors that are, maybe not doing things the right way, or offering inducements, and you have to steer clear of that. You have to find out initially from the beginning conversations with kids that you are recruiting, how are we going to do this? What is the method in which
what's the modern mom and dad like right now? Are they difficult? Is there an evolving mentality that you've seen over the course of your couple of decades doing this?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I don't say that they're difficult. It can be just a little bit naive to the process, and a little bit, naive about, usually about their son's talent level and, the future.
We've still got a little bit of the little league parent mentality,
but
right?
that's being parents. I'm a parent myself, and I think my son is probably, maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, well, you already took him out of you already sent him to the coaching direction. So there's a little bit of there's a little bit of actualized effort going on there.
Sure, but it's not necessarily.
You're an educated parent in the basketball world.
It's not necessarily the parents, however. It's the others. It's the typically the AAU coach, or the high school coach, or the uncle, or the other members of the inner circle, who are more fans than even the parents are, that usually cause the difficulty.
Honest answers. I guess we should probably preview next season. Actually talk a little shop. We'll be right back.
Big happy day. Everybody's so excited. Friends and family here, full of emotion. We're just excited for this opportunity.
It's great to have a great coach in Coach Cox. You know, he's going to be a great, excellent coach this year. So we're looking forward to the future, being successful.
So there's Langevin, Doughton in front of him. But I'll tell you, if you can get Langevin to, handle the ball under the hoop, he's been a monster on defense and on the boards. If he can, my old high school coach used to call it the nickel bounce. Mm-hmm. If you put the ball on the floor underneath the hoop for no reason, it was only worth a nickel. Wow. That's a nickel bounce.
How about that?
Yeah, another thing he used to
use that one.
Yeah, right. That's not bad,
I'll have to
right?
use that one. It's pretty good.
If you even come down.
No, absolutely. We're actually in the market for 2 assistant coaches.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, I got a couple of hours a day. I could. Talk about a disaster. Anyway, there'll be some holes this year.
Sure.
Yeah, this is the whole thing that you've got to navigate right now, because even if Dan Hurley had stayed, putting my objective hat on and seeing the program somewhat intimately and being semi-informed about major college basketball, I would say that this is a half the rebuilding year. I mean, who knows, right? So here you are, first guy in, all these promises. Is this an NCAA returning type team here? Should the expectations be that high, or is everyone need to take a little bit of a deep breath?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't call it necessarily a rebuild. The potential for an NCAA caliber team is there. We have a long way to go, obviously, just based on the simple fact that we lost, 5 very impactful seniors. Mature kids. Poised, and very productive seniors. I mean, it's probably over, 3,000 to 4,000 points, probably over 40 shot attempts a game, so we've lost a lot, but I do feel very good about the core group of guys that we have returning to this roster.
You're going to feel a lot of pressure, put people in the building. There was nothing like this season when all of a sudden water rose, the building was mostly full, if not full. I would suggest the Ryan Center, when it's full or almost full, is one of the toughest places to play in the country,
Absolutely.
Period.
Absolutely.
But when there's a number, I don't know what it is, it's like at 4,500 where all of a sudden it goes to another level, and I can feel it on the microphone during a ball game. When we get closer to the season next year, you come back in here and make your pitch to fill that place.
Absolutely.
Because it means a difference, doesn't it?
It makes a huge difference. This is something that we talk to our marketing department in particular about all of the time. The value of that gym being, as you mentioned, of that arena, being, 3/4 full to full, it makes a huge difference in winning and losing. And again, this is not to put the onus or to make any excuses about whether or not we win or lose a close game.
It's worth a couple of baskets.
But it is worth a couple of baskets just to juice the energy that it provides our players.
Well, listen, I could talk to you all day. I'm thrilled for you. I'm thrilled for the continuity of the program. We wish you the best of luck. Be an often guest as time allows. And I have 15 seconds. What's the final thought you have for people as they anticipate next fall?
Oh, wow. Anticipate a fun, energetic style of basketball where we're going to be very competitive, and I think they're going to be excited about what they actually see these young fellas do out there on that floor next year.
Well, we've been excited for the last few years, so we'll keep it up. Congratulations, David.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Final word and we come back. Stay with us. 70th anniversary of Israel comes up on Monday, and we've got some reflection on that. There's a lot going on between that great country and ours, and cultural, theological, political. We'll touch on all of it Monday. You have a great weekend. I hear it's going to be warm tomorrow at least. Get your sticks out. See ya.